Okay, so let's talk about this lovely book, African Delights. It's a collection of short stories. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, when I decided that I was putting together a collection of short stories, um, it was after a number of years of writing stories with no intention of actually publishing them as a collection. I'm the kind of writer who writes all the time, even if I'm not clear about what I want my writing to be in the end. So when I felt like I had written a substantial number of stories that could form a collection, so I looked at them and tried to decide on the sequence that they would take. And I felt like, in the year 2010, 2011, what do you want to contribute to the South African narrative? And I felt that as a writer, it's part of my responsibility to educate and entertain. So I selected a story that are situated in different historical moments. Because I find it difficult that as a South African writer, I can write about the present period without making reference to the past. So as a result, I made the first section of my collection is based in Sophia town of the 50s, which was a very significant period in South African politics, especially, and cultural revolution. The next part, White Encounters, is set during the 1980s up to the transitional period of the early 90s. And then the last two sections explore the present condition in South Africa.
Okay, published in South Africa in 2011, published in Nigeria in 2014. Why did you think Nigerian readers will enjoy this book?
I did not think so, honestly. Because when I write, I don't think much about readers. All I want, to do is to create the best work possible. So I visited Nigeria sometime in 2012, I believe. And when I came here, coincidentally, The Guardian had just published a review by Tade Padiola.
Yeah.
Of a review
book
of African Delights.
Oh.
And the reaction there, and actually he sort of made comparison of my work with the works that Nigerian readers would be familiar with. And after that, there was a lot of interest. I got contacted on social media and all of that, until Bookclub showed interest in publishing the work. And to me, to be published in Nigeria is the ultimate goal of any writer from the continent, because as I said, I grew up reading a lot of writers from the continent, especially Nigerian writers. And as I studied African literature, I also realized that there's always been interaction between South African writers and Nigerian writers. Yeah. In fact, some South African writers, like Dennis Brutus, first got published in Nigeria under the Bari movement. There was interaction between people like Louis Ngosi and Christopher Okibo, Tino Achebe and Ezekiel Mpahlele. Louis Ngosi and Shoyinga mainly, Okibo and Dennis Brutus, Kyurapez Hosisile. So there has always been that dialogue. And this emanates as far back as the 1960s. So today, in the day of social media, I think we should try and revive that culture. It should be much easier for writers across the continent to interact and share experiences.
I would like you to tell me a bit more about that. So, for those of us in Nigeria, it seems we don't usually get a sense of how relevant Nigerian literature is on the continent. For most people in the country. Give me a sense of that. You just said now that It's the ultimate thing for writers on the continent to be published in Nigeria. What did you mean by that?
I think from the South African perspective, you must understand that we attained our freedom after more than 30 years. Nigeria attained independence. So we had to learn a lot from Nigeria. Some of the literature that has been written 40 years ago by Nigerian writers is more relevant to South Africa today, because now we are grappling with post-independence situation. Things that Achebe and your Aigwe Amars and others warned about more than 40 years ago, almost 50 years ago. So South Africa, in a sense, we're lagging behind. We are still a new country, a new democracy, that should learn from other countries. But also at the same time, if you check this new generation of writers, your Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, your Chika Unengwe, Lola Shoneyin, you name them, Tony Khan, they have managed to take our story to the rest of the world. They are celebrated all over the world, and South Africa equally is producing more writers, new writers who are also making a mark in the world. So in a sense, there is an upsurge of new talents in both countries. And Nigeria, being the largest, being the most populous country on the continent. So to actually have your book published here, it means you reach a wider network of audiences.
Now, you are the head of books and publishing of the Department of Arts and Culture in South Africa. I found that very fascinating. So there is a Department of Books and Publishing in the Ministry of Arts and Culture in South Africa. That's very interesting. Tell me a bit more about that. It looks like the South African government takes that very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Since 2004, I've worked as the head of books and publishing in the Department of Arts and Culture in South Africa. And the job actually is the kind of job that I would do if I wasn't getting paid for it. Because I get to interact with writers across the land. I interact with publishers, I interact with booksellers. Essentially, I'm directly involved with the development of the culture of reading and writing in South Africa, and ensuring that the publishing industry develops in an equitable manner that is across all languages. Over the years, I've been involved, for instance, with founding or supporting literary festivals, book fairs, and actually taking South African writers to some of these events across the world, and also founding literary journals, which really help, especially for new writers, to get published and sort of appear alongside seasoned writers. And generally to promote a culture of reading and writing, and putting forward before everything else literature written by African writers.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Channels Book Club. Thank you. Nice having you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hope to have you here again.